Hi, it's Jordan Gard here from the Women's Sports Alliance. We're here today with Team GB swimmer and Olympic gold medalist Anna Hopkin. Welcome, Anna. How would you describe your training, or swimming training, from the ages of 8 to 13 years old?
So when I was 8, I started swimming at my local club and trained there for a couple of years, and then moved to a more serious squad, like the Lancashire squad, when I was about 10, and I was there till I was 13. And I'd say that it was probably quite intense at quite a young age, like probably moving to that squad. It was definitely a really good decision for my swimming. I did improve a lot, but also it was a lot of training at that age and a very intense schedule, and I was also doing a lot of other sports that kind of conflicted with it, so it was sort of a bit of a decision as to having to prioritise and specialise in swimming quite early.
In terms of like friends and things like that, what was that atmosphere like? Did you meet people there and that's why you continued?
Yeah, there was a lot of like similar age people I was swimming with, so it was a really social club to be in, but I guess you're all, and I think you do need those people because you're all in the same situation and you need people that are going through the same thing. But I guess it was also trying to balance that with my friends at school and trying to see them as well, so that was quite tough at that age as well.
So at 13, you stopped swimming. Why was that? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I stopped swimming at 13. I guess it was a mixture of things. Like I wasn't enjoying the sport so much. I guess I was finding it a bit, almost like a burden. Like every time I went to training, I was really struggling to motivate myself. I wasn't enjoying training anymore. I didn't really know what my motivation was, like where I wanted to get to with it. And I think also having to stop so many sports when I was younger, I kind of resented swimming making me do that in a way. And I guess at 13, I kind of made the decision that I wanted to take a back seat from swimming and pick up a lot of other sports that I wish I hadn't had to stop. And I think I just needed that variety to kind of give me a bit of a mental and physical break, really, and sort of get the balance back in my life.
What was the dream after you stopped? Did you ever think you'd get back into swimming, or was that it for you?
No, I think at 13 I thought I probably wouldn't be racing again. I think I stopped at a good point where I didn't completely hate the sport or anything. You know, I still loved swimming. I just didn't want to do it at that intensity anymore. And so I still swam a few times a week, but I definitely never thought I would take it to the level I have now. And I also competed in a lot of other sports during my break. I didn't really compete in swimming, but I did a lot of trampolining and gymnastics and running, which kind of still kept that, I guess, competitive side of me. I always have been very competitive and have had a drive to win things. But I guess I kind of knew swimming was always a sport that I was best at.
Do you look back on that break and see it as an instrumental part of your gold medal success, or do you think you could have done that without that break?
I think it's a difficult one to know exactly what would have happened if I'd carried on. I think I knew for sure I needed that break because it was just a bit too much at that time, and I think if I'd carried on in that situation, not enjoying it, I think I would have got to a point where I maybe never wanted to swim again. And so I think for me, stopping at that point was probably the right thing to do for me. And maybe not ever thinking that I was going to try get back into swimming and take it to a really high level kind of took the pressure and expectation off when I did finally get back into racing again. So yeah, I guess it was sort of, I didn't really know what was going to happen beyond the point when I stopped, but I just knew that it was the right thing to do at the time.
So why did you start swimming again?
So it was probably the year before I went to university when I was still training a few times a week at Blackburn. And my coach there he was great, and he knew I didn't want to obviously take it super intensely right then and there, but we were focusing just on the 50 fly because I used to be a fly swimmer, and he started to get me in the gym. We were doing some boxing, trying different things. I was really enjoying training, and he suggested that I go for the British Champs in 2014, and that was probably the first year I'd really gotten back into racing again. So I guess just having a taste of racing again and doing well, I got that feeling back of, you know, like accomplishment and having a goal and a motivation, and I think that kind of spurred me on when I did go to university in 2014 to kind of join the team and just see where I could get with it. But I was a bit cautious, I guess, when I did get back into it. I just didn't want to go straight from doing like 2 sessions to 8 sessions and get back to that point where I wasn't enjoying it again.
So you said you got that feeling back. Was it the same feeling or was it different this time around?
I think it was a different feeling because I think when I was younger I didn't really know what I was swimming for. I knew I was good at swimming and people expected me to train hard and do as well as I could, but I didn't really know what my goal was. When I was that young, it's hard to look so far ahead as the Olympics when it could be sort of 10 years down the line. But I think when I rejoined the sport, there wasn't really any expectation or pressure on it. I just enjoyed training. I loved sprint training. I really enjoyed the group I was in. And I really enjoyed getting back into competing for the university where it's just fun and there's low pressure, and I didn't really have sort of major goals beyond each year. I was just kind of taking it one step at a time.
So fast forward to more recently then, talk us through the final qualifying race for the Tokyo 2020/21 Olympics.
Yeah, so going into Olympic trials this year, it was, I guess, a little bit daunting because of obviously COVID and not having as many races. It was more difficult to tell exactly what kind of shape I was in. But having done the heat already that day of the 100 free, and I felt really good. I felt like it was smooth. I could go a lot quicker. And so going into the final, I was definitely nervous, but I've kind of learned over the years that I swim best when I just completely relax and take the pressure off it and just see it as an opportunity to just see how well I can do and not worry about the outcome or needing to win or hit a certain time. And so I think I took that approach and it worked out well for me, and I ended up finishing second. Me and Freya were hundredths apart and both got under the consideration time. So I think that just gave me a lot of confidence doing that race. I think I knew when I finished there was still a lot to come, but obviously that's kind of the first hurdle to get over. And so it was more a relief that I'd done it, I guess.
So on the starting block, can you actually forget where you are, forget that Olympic trials or the Olympic Games are on the cards? Are you able to actually just switch off, and what do you think about?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, I think. I guess when I'm on the blocks, I try to think more about the process rather than the situation or the outcome. So I try not to think on the blocks like this is my opportunity to qualify for the Olympics, or I want to go this time, or I want to win. I just think focus on your dive and your underwaters, you break out, build through the first length and then build again through the second length. So it's kind of all stuff me and my coach talk about all the time, and just focusing on those details kind of keep your mind just focusing on your race and technique and things like that rather than where everyone else is in the race.
So when you touched the wall, that moment when you came second in that final qualifying race, what emotions were you feeling? What was going through your head then?
I think for me, when I finished and I saw the time and it was under the consideration time, it was just relief more than anything, because even then it's not like you touch and you know for sure that you're going to the Olympics. You just get if you're within the consideration time, it's very likely, but it's not 100%. But I kind of knew, hopefully that'll be enough. And I guess it was just the relief more than anything, especially after having a few competitions before that I wasn't totally happy with the times I was doing. They were okay, but I was hoping for a little bit quicker. And so going into trials, it was just still uncertain as to whether I thought I was going to do the consideration time. So I think it was more just relief, and then obviously that's only a tiny portion of the job that's to be done then. So it was kind of just looking forward after that.
So talk to us about the moment that you found out that you'd qualified for the Olympic Games. What on earth were you thinking then?
Yeah, I was so happy at that point. I mean, it's been sort of a lot of work's gone into it, and it kind of all builds up, and obviously having an extra year as well with the delay, it's kind of almost puts more pressure on, making it this time around. And so I think to finally get that confirmation, and it just makes everything kind of worthwhile, and you've achieved something that you've been working towards for so long. It's it's a difficult feeling to describe, I guess.
Was it like in the moment there you're so thrilled, or in that moment did you then think, right, I've got a job to do now, looking forward?
I think I took a bit of time, obviously, when I received the news, and just to enjoy it and not worry too much about the future, and just kind of tell my family and friends and they can enjoy it with me. And then obviously you kind of get back into the water and back to work, because obviously, I mean, after trials we tend to have a couple days off, so it gives you the opportunity to just decompress and kind of deal with the emotions you've had. Obviously some people have, you know, super high emotions and some people have really low emotions, so it's important to have that time to deal with those. And luckily for me, I was on the super high emotion side, but yeah, then you kind of have to switch back to work mode quite quickly.
And then you raced in between that qualifier and the Olympic Games. How did those competitions / races go?
Yeah, so we had Europeans, which were only about a month after trials. And I think at that point, I still felt like I'd been quite tense going into races before that, just because I knew the pressure was building towards Olympic trials. But having that confirmation that I was on the team, I felt a lot freer racing at Europeans. I felt like I didn't have anything to prove, and it wasn't a focus meet for us because obviously Olympics was coming up in the summer, and so there was really no pressure on those races. But I think that really brought a better side of me out, and I also had a lot of confidence knowing that I was on the team. So I just felt like I did some of my best swims there in quite hard training, and it gave me a lot more confidence going forward to Olympics after that.
Nick Hope said, I spoke to Nick Hope before this interview, and he said, make sure you ask Anna about the races between the qualifiers and the Olympic Games. He said, because she was flying, oh. She was so good. So at the Olympic holding camp, how did you feel? What did you see? What was going through your mind? Was it different to when you found out that you qualified for the Olympics?
Yeah, so I guess in the holding camp, it starts to get a bit more serious. You're obviously in the country and you're preparing, but we were kind of told by the coaching staff and everyone around us just to not think about racing until you're in the village, because it takes a lot of emotional energy to be constantly thinking about an Olympic race. Like it is quite an emotional feeling, and so you just kind of have to not think about that and just focus on the training and your tapering and resting and recovering and getting ready to be in race condition, I guess. So it was actually quite a relaxed and chilled camp, I think, which I think brought the best out of everyone around. Like no one was getting scared about what was coming up. Everyone was just kind of relaxed, training, getting to know the team as well. I think that's really important, to have a good team bond. So yeah, it was a really good camp actually.
And I'm sure the Olympic Village was the total opposite. How's that?
Yeah, the Olympic Village was, I guess, different to what I've experienced before, and especially with COVID, there was obviously a lot of different restrictions in place that wouldn't usually be at an Olympic Village, but you still got the Olympic vibe, and obviously there's so many people walking around from different countries and different sports, which really creates an amazing atmosphere. But I guess it's kind of the time where everyone starts to focus on their own races, and obviously everyone's timelines are different, so some people are racing day 1 and some people aren't racing till day 4 or 5, so everyone's kind of in a different state mentally, and you have to sort of be aware of everyone else and what they might need, or how to treat the people around you, to be sort of respectful of that.
So you were selected for the mixed 4x100 medley team. How did you get selected for that? What was the lead up to being selected for that?
Yeah, so the mixed medley is obviously 2 guys, 2 girls, and typically we would always put a girl on the freestyle. And having already raced that at Europeans and we won and almost broke the world record, it was a race that I think everyone knew we had a really good chance of gold and potentially breaking the world record at. So it was definitely the race that I wanted to be chosen for. And obviously having me and Freya's an equally amazing sprinter, and you know, we're always neck and neck, and it's, you know, sometimes she's ahead, sometimes I'm ahead, so you never quite know who's going to be the one that gets picked for that relay. And I think it was all just on our performances in the individuals, and I made the individual 100 free final, so it was kind of me that got called up to do that leg on the relay, which was kind of like a lot of pressure, but also obviously what I'd been working towards was being the person that they put on that relay, so very exciting as well.
Was it exciting, or was it, oh God, I'm gonna have to finish this race?
Yeah, it was a bit of both. Like, I obviously, you know, I wanted to be that person, and it was exciting, but when it's actually confirmed, the nerves start sort of coming up, and you know that, you know, no one wants to let down a relay like that on the last leg, and being that person who's kind of anchoring at home and touching the wall, it is quite a lot of pressure. But, you know, the other guys got me such a good lead as well, and, you know, we were all behind each other, which made it a lot easier.
So we'll talk about the race in a minute, but hours before that race, what were you thinking? Were you relaxed? So you obviously want a relaxed mental state. Was that how it was, or was that more difficult than ever in that moment?
Yeah, I think I was actually quite relaxed before the race. It was interesting because finals were in the morning, so it's not like you have the whole day to just think about what's to come, which I think did help. Me and Kathleen was on the backstroke of that relay. We were in the same flat together in the village, so we kind of got up and watched some other sports on the TV to just kind of take our mind off it, and went to the pool together. It was nice to have someone else in the same situation to kind of support each other. And I guess I knew that, like, Caleb Dressel would be on the US team on the anchor leg, so I kind of was just aware of who was in other teams and the kind of distance we needed ahead of each team to make sure that I could stay ahead. So I guess I was thinking a little bit about position and where we needed to be, but I think you can't really do much else than just swim your best race, so that's all I was focusing on doing.
So talk us through the whole race, right from the start to the finish, how it felt, because obviously you were the last person to swim, right? So how you felt leading up to that, but go for it, just talk us through that.
Yeah, so it's quite difficult being the last person on a relay, because you obviously see the whole race and you kind of have the nerves building up throughout it. And obviously having Kathleen on the backstroke versus a lot of guys for other teams, we were behind after the backstroke naturally. And then you've got Adam going in, who kind of like is just trying to catch everyone, and you know, a lot of other teams had girls on their breaststroke leg as well, so he was kind of catching quite a few people. I mean, he's catching girls, but he's also catching the guys as well, so he's obviously a great person to have on a relay. And then James Guy went in after him, and that was kind of the key leg I was watching for, really, because it was all about how much distance Jimmy could get over the US for me. Because the US had a girl on fly, and so I think at 50 metres he was maybe 4 or 5 seconds ahead of the Americans, and we'd kind of worked out I would need at least 5 or 6 seconds ahead of Dressel diving in. Obviously you ideally want a little bit more, because I think if Dressel saw you that close, you know, it's going to be difficult to hold him off. But I saw that if we were already 4 or 5 seconds at the 50 metre on the fly, hopefully the next 50 he could catch a lot more. And so when I came to dive in, I didn't really look at the position of everyone down the last sort of 25 metres. I didn't really want to be focusing on that. I was just focusing on doing a good takeover from Jimmy. And I guess down the first length, I was not really worrying about where anyone else was, because we were quite far ahead at that point, so I didn't really couldn't see anyone else, so I could just focus on my own race, which I think is probably when I swim my best anyway, when I've not got any other distractions. And so the first length felt really good, and then it was only when I turned that I sort of had a little look around as to where everyone else was. And I guess I looked first for Dressel because he was in the lane next to me, and he seemed like he was quite far behind, so I wasn't too concerned about him. And then there was obviously Emma McKeon on the Australian team, who was 100 free Olympic champion, so I was kind of aware of her. And then the girl on the Chinese relay, I was kind of knew that as long as I was ahead of those two, I should be okay, and obviously needed to be a bit further ahead of Dressel. But generally I think I'm going to be okay, but obviously you never know. In an Olympic final, anything can happen. So after that point, I just didn't really want to look around or watch where anyone else was down the last length. And so it was more just about keeping control of my technique and staying focused on my own race and getting to the wall as quick as I could, really. And I was kind of aware of, I think it was like the splash from Emma McKeon just to my right, that I could kind of see she was there, but I was aware that she wasn't gonna catch at that point. So I was pretty confident that we'd done enough by the last sort of 10, 15 to go, but obviously knowing that Dressel's going to be thundering down the length next year is always quite daunting down the last sort of 15 metres, not quite knowing whether he's going to catch you or not, but luckily we were all fine, so it was good.
So you touched the wall, then what?
Yeah, it's a weird one because you don't really want to think about how you're going to react if you win, because you don't want to jinx it or anything, and so I hadn't really thought about what I would do when I finished, and I'm not really the kind of person that like splashes the water or gets on the lane rope or anything, so I was just like a little bit like overwhelmed and not quite knowing how to celebrate. And obviously when it's with the relay as well, it's a celebration for 4 people, so I was kind of looking for them to see their reactions and celebrate together, really.
When you found out, when did you find out? It wasn't when you were in the water, was there? Wasn't there something where James didn't know if he jumped in too early or something?
Yeah, I mean, I touched the wall and I kind of knew before I saw the board we'd won, because I could see across the pool that everyone else was finishing. And obviously then looking at the board and seeing the 1 and the world record, so that was kind of the point where I was like, that's it, we're done, we've won. And the others were celebrating, but it felt like they weren't like fully celebrating, and Jimmy said it was because he thought he'd gone earlier, and as it turned out he was completely fine, like he wasn't even that close, but I guess they were just being a bit more conservative with their celebrations because they were waiting for the official confirmation. And so I was a bit like, why is everyone not like jumping up and down? And then the confirmation came, and then obviously, you know, that was the point where we were all like, yep, we've done it.
So not only did you win an Olympic gold medal, you also broke the world record. How did that feel at the time, and how does that feel now?
I think at the time it was all just like so overwhelming, like, and we kind of knew it was on our radar, like we could definitely give it a good go, but I think like when you like think of it as a world record, like that's just a bit insane, really. Like I never thought I would be part of a world record breaking team, so it's kind of weird now thinking that I'm a world record holder.
Amazing, by the way. I love your medal. What's next for you? What have you got on your radar next? What's the targets?
Yeah, so post-Olympics we got back in quite quickly because we had the International Swimming League, which I've just got back from, and so we have the second round of that, which are in Eindhoven in 4 weeks. So that's kind of coming up soon, and that's a bit more of a fun meet, like it's short course and less pressure, and just go out there, see how fast we can swim. And then next year is quite a big year for long course swimming. We've got the Worlds in Japan in May, so that's kind of going to be the first major international competition I'll have. And then obviously Commonwealths are this year in Birmingham, so that'll be exciting. And then we go straight into Europeans in Rome after Commonwealth. So you don't often have 3 major meets in 1 year, but I think because of like postponements and delays, they've all been kind of put into 1 year. But I think post-Olympics, it's just quite nice to have a lot going on. You don't really want to have that like post-Olympic blues where you just don't really know what your purpose is. So it's quite nice to have a lot to focus on.
So focusing on Paris in 4 years?
Yeah, so Paris will be the kind of ultimate goal from now. Obviously, it's a new Olympic cycle already, so it's kind of, that is the focus. But I think this year it's just about taking each competition at a time. Obviously you do need a bit of a mental and physical break after an Olympic cycle, and so definitely pre-December will be a bit more chilled, and then it'll really gear up into focusing towards Paris sort of January time.
Amazing. Anna, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for speaking with us. I'm going to wear that medal at some point, so I'll steal it from you for a minute, but that's it from us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.